Welcome back to how I fixed World of Warcraft for a TTRPG. If this is your first video, this is how I rebooted the world of Azeroth and beyond for a tabletop RPG campaign I'm running on Discord with a couple of friends. One of my primary goals was to rebuild things, to make it a more believable world, but also to make it serve a TTRPG better, as well as the specific needs of my players. Last time, we went to the Eastern Kingdoms and checked how the Forsaken and the Blood Elves were doing, fixing a lot of the writing for Sylvanas and Kel'Thas. But there is still a lot left in the continent of Lordaeron, and most of those topics are the other human kingdoms. There were 7 major human kingdoms before the First War, and Lordaeron was by far the largest of them. We've already talked about what happened to it and how it's been faring between the Forsaken, also known as the afflicted citizens of Lordaeron, and the living survivors of the kingdom uniting against the common threats. And frankly, Lordaeron was so huge, you could easily squeeze several more kingdoms in there. And I kind of did, mentioning in the distant history of the Arathi the fallen kingdoms of Chimeria, which largely occupied Silverpine Forest, and whose mad king sided with the trolls and ended up getting buried alive by the 100 for it. Or the kingdom of Stratholm, built by the renowned city-builder tribe of the Hastrati. Over the long history of Lordaeron, these kingdoms were destroyed or assimilated by the kingdom of the Menethil dynasty. But they are not the topic today. I want to go over the remaining canon kingdoms and what I've done with them in my game since the start of the reboot. Probably one of the more popular ones is Gilneas, because there's a lot of furries and a lot of people who are really into werewolves, of which there may be considerable overlap. But anyway, Gilneas. At the start of the game, Gilneas was in full isolationism mode. But we had quite a few characters who came from Gilneas before the reboot, so we had to deal with the question of what's happening there sooner rather than later, and not wait for its canon opening. Especially since Sylvanas is neither cartoonishly evil nor with the Horde, she's probably not going to be invading it and plaguing it. So maybe they would never open? We of course had to change that. When we first got to Gilneas, by passing the wall with our special magic, the Worgen curse was only starting. This first storyline was largely done and led by one of my other players, so I won't go into too much detail to tell his story, but long story short, there was a series of murders. We investigated those murders and found some form of a wolf cult rising in Gilneas as the curse started spreading. As we took care of the people responsible for that, nevertheless, Gen Greymane got bitten in the process, and rudely told us outsiders to leave his kingdom. We returned a little while later, as one of the people who were still Gilnean nobles was invited to a big party in Gilneas city, organized by Vincent Godfrey. And the big reveal he was showing to the party was Gen Greymane, in Worgen form, dead on a rack, revealing the king was corrupting the kingdom with the curse, and that with the help of Lord Hiram Creed, he seized power. I know that killing Greymane off might be controversial. There is a compelling story about the humility he had to be taught after getting beaten down and down again. However, WarCraft used to have this problem for a long time, where a lot of the young people died so that their fathers could cry about it. Sure, it's tragic, but a lot of the potential younger generation got decimated by this trend, and I wanted to change that. I decided Gen needed to go so that Liam can now have his chance to shine. With this story, without going into too much detail, we confronted Hiram Creed, the Black Draconid in disguise, creating his Black Howl Worgen, the Worgen infused with the draconic blood, and killed him, dealing with one of the character's past issues. Then we went on to find and confront Vincent Godfrey in Greymane Manor, where he helped the remaining members of the Greymane family. Godfrey was slain there, and Liam was freed with the help of Darius Crowley. Since us outsiders had such a huge part in helping free the newly minted king of Gilneas, Liam agreed to implement some changes, such as opening up the wall and letting the kingdom rejoin the world much earlier, or working with our healers to help restore the minds of the Worgen instead of hunting them down like animals. He may also have had a thing with Lorna Crowley in this timeline, so that family also ended up doing much better. There are a bunch of much smaller kingdoms around the continent of Lordaeron, one of which is Dalaran, of which I haven't changed a whole lot about. As of the current year in the game, which is 26 ADP, it is still being rebuilt under the bubble. Although I have to say, it's probably not going to be flying around. Don't get me wrong, flying cities are cool. Still, I feel like I'd rather just have Dalaran be where it always was. And now the territory around it is much less hostile. As of now, the Kirin Tor are still largely alliance-aligned, but when they're ready, much like many other factions in my reboot, they are unlikely to be very concerned with the race of the applicants. So you will probably see, eventually, Blood Elves and Forsaken and Trolls in the Kirin Tor. The next minor kingdom is Alterac. This actually ties back with Gilneas a little bit, because while we were there, we found Isilden Perenold. He was a member of Alterac's ruling family who was last seen in Gilneas decades ago in canon, and he hasn't been heard from since. So in our version, we helped free him from a little problem he had and promised him aid in retaking Alterac for himself. We haven't really done much about that since, and this was a while ago for us, but I am planning on eventually returning there and perhaps helping Isilden claim the throne and bring Alterac out of the chaos and ruin it's in. We did have a campaign in Alterac before the reboot, where we dealt with Blackthorn, pining for the banshee that once possessed him, and another Perenold worshipping Xalatath before the feed pictures. And this may be a bit of why I'm not returning there very quickly, not the feed pictures. We'd have to do a lot of the same stuff again. I'll figure it out eventually, but the goal is, if the players run with it, to make Isilden king. I probably won't touch a lot on the hinterlands here and save it for a future video about dwarves and what they're doing, because that is also a big topic here, and maybe I'll also do forest trolls while we're at it. Zulaman is another big missed opportunity in WoW. It's supposed to be a whole kingdom, a whole zone, and all we really got out of it was a raid. Twice. There is some hope it might show up in Midnight, and I hope not just as a raid again, but that we'll get to see a lot more of their culture. Maybe they won't, because they'll go all elves in that expansion, but I like to keep some hope. I didn't want to believe in the Oblivion remake, but here we are, so who knows, maybe it will be good. Probably the last of the minor kingdoms here is Stromgarde, and it got dealt a really bad hand in canon. If you dig into the lore, it wasn't looking like this ruin we found in Vanilla, wow, even just a year or two before, or something along those lines. It just kind of randomly, ogres and syndicate take over huge chunks of the city and leave it in ruin. So that never happened for us. Although this is another place we haven't really done a lot with, because the plot just took us elsewhere. I don't want to leave it in ruin. I mean, Galen is still a little bitch, and might want to murder Thoras anyway, but we haven't gotten there, at least yet. Hey, Future Kalantas here. While editing this video, I realized a couple of mistakes I'm about to make about Kultiras. Firstly, I talk about an RPG map of Kultiras. I was really seeing clearly in my head a map that included a bunch of cities from Kultiras from prior lore, and I can't find this map anywhere now. Did they just imagine it? Maybe, I don't know. It's called confabulation, and some people think it proves the minds wandering into alternate realities. My mind didn't wander into an alternate reality where that map was real. I probably just imagined it. And so that map you are about to hear me talk about does not exist. Probably does not exist unless you can find it for me and send it to me in the comments below. And also, I will talk about the city of Boralis when what I really meant is the city of Drisburg, which appeared in the RPG lore and then never appeared again in the MMO. So if you hear me talk about Boralis missing, imagine I am talking about Drisburg. Okay? And try to forgive me for imagining that map. So yeah, that'll be all. You're about to get back to the past me. So without going to Stormwind, which needs its own video, really, the last human kingdom here is Kultiras. And here I want to bring your attention to this old map of Kultiras from prior lore, from the WarCraft RPG. And I know the RPG has been technically decanonized, and then pieces of it were being slowly brought back into the canon. But this shape of it hasn't only appeared in the RPG. The RPG just gave us more detail on it. But then they really started to mess with Kultiras. First, in Cataclysm, someone put Vashir in the place Kultiras was supposed to be. Then there was an offhanded comment in a book about it being a burning slag. And then BFA came, everyone's most hated expansion, until Shadowlands, and it did this to it. Like, come on, man. Like what is this blob? Why did you change it that much? I do get occasional comments about why I didn't go with a more Warcraft 3 loyal geography in my reboot. And the thing with making things for a TTRPG campaign is you make them for the players you have. And my players and me were largely very used to the WoW geography of the Eastern Kingdoms already, so that is the general shape I kept, with some minor adjustments. Kultiras, though, I could not in good conscience stay with this. So I mostly returned to the old geography, although I added some good bits from BFA. I added the Tiragard sound, though much smaller. I added Drustvar and all the Drust lore, because it was frankly very cool. But I also added bits like the city of Boralis or the location of Crestfall. Crestfall. Seriously, they had a guy named after it. And they didn't put it in the game until a patch where it was made into an island expedition, not connected to the main landmass. What was going on there? What was happening that visit? What? Here's a big change that happened in Kultiras that hasn't really come up recently in my game. Priscilla Ashvane is now Lord Admiral, because the Admiralty was never really hereditary in prior lore. Ashvane wouldn't have needed to go through the whole pirate plot. All she needed was a political campaign and running for the office. I mean, why was Catherine Proudmoore Lord Admiral? Why did the office go to the guy's wife? I mean, did she just happen to be a high-ranking admiral too? We're not given any detail on how that happened, and previously the Lord Admiral was explicitly not a king who would be inherited by his children, or his wife when he still has living children. And besides, Ashwin being in control and causing problems for Jaina is a much more interesting plot than Catherine going, "Yes, send my daughter to the Torture Island, because my friend said so." I believe we've gone over all the human kingdoms by now, except Stormwind, which I'm leaving for later. Did I forget anything? Do you want me to talk in more detail about any specific topic I've skimmed here? If you do, please don't forget to leave a comment below. In the next part, we should be talking about dwarves and forest trolls, and that will probably let us cover the majority of the Eastern Kingdoms. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and if you want to support the channel, I don't have a Patreon, but you can do it on my Ko-fi page, linked in the video description below. And I hope to see you next time.